Hi, welcome to the Napoleon Memoirs. I hope you're having a really good evening. So let's get started with the memoirs of Napoleon's poisoner, Count Charles Tristan de Montaigne. All the traitors are maneuvering to get rid of Napoleon so they can get back to their crime empire. And we're going through the letters. There's a lot of details here. So here we go. The second was to reply to the dispatch forwarded from New York and was as follows. Paris, July 4th, 1815. General Becker, the Commission of Government has received your letter, written from New York and dated from the 2nd of July. Napoleon ought to embark without delay. The success of our negotiations principally depends upon the assurance of this fact, which the Allied powers wish to receive, and you do not know to what extent the safety and tranquility of the state are compromised by these delays. Napoleon adopted his resolution immediately. His departure would not have been possible on the 29th. The commission then places the person of Napoleon under your responsibility. It will be your duty to employ such means of force as may be necessary, treating him with becoming respect. See that he reach Rochefort without delay, and take means for his immediate embarkation. As to the services which he offers, our duties towards France and our engagement to foreign powers do not permit us to accept them, and you will no longer entertain such proposals. Finally, the commission sees inconveniences in Napoleon's communicating with the English squadron and cannot therefore grant the permission required for that purpose. The Duke of Otranto, Carnot, Caulaincourt, Duke of Vicenza, Count Grenier, Quinet. Notwithstanding this, wherever Napoleon was recognized on his journey, he was saluted by the acclamations of the people. These acclamations caused the last radiance of joy and pride to brighten his countenance. On passing out of the towns and villages, he pointed out to General Becker and the other companions of his journey the infectious marshes, which at that time were covered with ricks of hay, and said, "You see, General, that the population cheerfully recognize the prosperity which I have created in their country, and that wherever I pass, I receive the blessings of a grateful people." On the 3rd of July, at 8 o'clock in the morning, we arrived at Rochefort. Emperor alighted at the hotel of the Maritime Prefecture and was received as a sovereign by Baron Bonifer. It was on the same 3rd of July that Paris, for the second time, opened its gates to the enemy. During almost the whole of the journey, the Emperor had continued melancholy, although his demeanor had never ceased to be calm and majestic. A few words which occasionally escaped him betrayed the manner in which his thoughts were occupied with the future, and showed that at the bottom of his heart he still cherished a hope of being again recalled by those who, on the contrary, manifested such an extraordinary haste to be relieved from his presence. During the whole of the journey, not a word either of his wife or son. From time to time, he took a pinch of snuff from General Becker's box, and as the box happened to be adorned with the portrait of Marie Louise, the Emperor once took it into his hand, looked at it for a moment, and returned it without uttering a syllable. The arrival of Napoleon produced a profound sensation in the town. The whole population was immediately in movement and filled the gardens of the prefecture with cries of "Vive l'Empereur!" These cries were repeated with so much frequency and earnestness during the whole day, and in the evening the Emperor thought it his duty to yield to these prolonged marks of affection, and appeared on the terrace, accompanied by the Maritime Prefect and his suite. The reasons of our sojourn at Rochefort till the evening of the 8th of July, when we embarked to go on board the Sal, are a mystery which I have never been able to fathom, for I could never bring myself to believe that we remained 5 days at Rochefort to wait for some boxes directed by mistake to La Rochelle, containing matters which constituted a part of the Grand Marshal's appointments in the Isle of Elba. But what is still more inexplicable is that these same boxes never reached Logwood. On the 10th of May, 1821, they had lain 5 years and a half at the customs house in St. Helena, addressed to a person in the suite of the Grand Marshal, as is proved by a letter of that date written to me by Sir Hudson Lowe, asking whether he should cause them to be delivered according to their address, in consequence of the application which had just been made concerning them, or whether he should consider them as part of the Emperor's personals and send them to me. My answers could not be a matter of doubt. The contents of these boxes were not compromised in the inventory which I had received, and I had, therefore, no legal right to receive them. I'm ignorant what became of them. It will be remembered that 2 frigates had been placed by the Provisional Government at the disposal of the Emperor. They were the Sal and the Medusa. The frigates were anchored under the protection of the batteries of the Isle of Aix and under the command of Captain Philibert, whose pennant was hoisted in the Sal. The Medusa, Captain Poney, was placed under the command of the captain of the Sal. On arriving at the Hotel of the Prefecture, a council was called by the orders of the general, but conformably to the desire of the Emperor. It was composed of superior officers, military and naval, among whom was Admiral Martin. The question to be discussed was the safest course to be adopted to ensure the Emperor's voyage to the United States. It was unfortunately too late, since the 29th of June, the English cruisers off the coast had been doubled, and it was unanimously decided that it was impossible to leave the harbor without falling into the hands of the enemy. Other means were then thought of and proposed. General Lallemant was commissioned to go and sound dispositions of Captain Baudin, who was in command of the Bayadere at the mouth of the Gironde. He brought back the assurance that the captain was devoted to His Majesty, would receive him with the highest distinction, and place his corvette at his disposal. At the same time, the naval officers of Rochefort offered to act as a crew of a small sloop belonging to a Danish merchant, who was father-in-law of one of them, named Besson, or, if the Emperor preferred it, of 2 chasseurs, with which they would attempt to convey him to America. The embarkation was proposed to take place during the night, and these brave young men entertained neither doubt nor fear. Count Lascazes was commissioned and empowered to arrange the whole affair with Lieutenant Besson on behalf of his father-in-law, and to provide all the necessaries of the voyage. These parties signed an agreement in the form following: agreement between Count Lascazes on the part on account of whom it may concern, and Lieutenant Besson of the Imperial Navy on the other on account of Mr. P.P. Dorfendorf, a native of Denmark. We, the undersigned, mutually engaged to abide by the articles hereinafter stipulated, and express our acquiescence by our hands and seals. Count Lascazes agrees on his part to place the sum of 25,000 francs at the disposal of Mr. Besson, provided the latter fulfill all the conditions hereinafter stated, article by article. Article 1. The Count Lascazes places a sum of 25,000 francs in cash at the disposal of Mr. Besson, for which Mr. Besson is to be accountable to Count Lascazes without interest at whatsoever period the whole sum may be returned. Article 2. Mr. Besson binds himself to Count Lascazes to fulfill the following conditions by means of the ship Magdalene, of 90 tons, sailing under the Danish flag belonging to the above named Mr. P.P. Frühldorfendorf, of which he is a consignee. Article 3. Mr. Besson agrees immediately and without the loss of a moment to put the ship Magdalene in a fit condition for a distant voyage, to provide her with cargo brandy, which he will purchase with the 25,000 francs placed at his disposal by countless causes, and engages strictly to follow the orders of his passengers, whom he binds himself to convey to their destination. Article 4. As soon as the above named sum of 25,000 francs shall be paid into the hands of Mr. Besson, the voyage which he has engaged to perform shall commence, and in case the voyage should not take place in consequence of orders received from the passengers, Mr. Besson is to receive from countless causes a sum of 2,500 francs as an indemnity should Mr. Besson wish to continue the voyage on his own account, which he is at full liberty to do. The sum of 2,500 francs is not to be paid. Article 5. In case the voyage be made on account of the passengers, and they are safely conveyed to their destination, countless causes, or someone acting for him, shall pay to Mr. Besson a sum of 5,000 francs, or the latter shall be indebted to countless causes in the sum 25,000 francs only. In case, however, the produce of the sale of the ship's cargo should amount to 30,000 francs, the payment of 5,000 francs by countless causes is not to take place, it being understood that the 5,000 francs in question are to meet the expenses of the Magdalene. Article 6. In case unforeseen events should lead to the loss of the vessel or cargo, Mr. Besson is, by the very fact, released from all obligations to countless causes on account of the 25,000 francs received by him. Article 7. Should Mr. Besson be obliged to incur any extraordinary expenses by the orders of his passengers, such expenses are to be repaid by said passengers, as well as any delay in the departure of the ship after the time fixed, at the rate of 50 francs per diem, such delays not to be reckoned till 8 days after the ship is completely ready for sea. Article 8. The voyage is to be considered complete when the passengers shall have been conveyed to their destination, or when the ship shall have arrived at the port desired by Captain Besson, if the voyage not be undertaken on account of the passengers, in both of which cases the above named sum of 25,000 francs shall not be paid to countless causes till 6 months after the safe arrival of the ship Magdalene, signed in duplicate, to countless causes Besson, Rochefort, July 6, 1815. So, Napoleon always had a very good relationship with Denmark. They didn't like his enemies either. They tried to bust him out, but it didn't work out. It's freaking too good on the sea. Napoleon always said his enemies were too good on the sea. He didn't think he could escape. Anyway, he probably couldn't. They are too good on the sea. And now they're too good on planes. Figure that out? Now they got the air all locked up. So, transportation's a big way that we're controlled through transportation. Unfortunately. All right, so it's time for Italian. And Las Casas in Italian, one of my more challenging languages. I am a quarter Italian, but I've never had any chance to speak Italian in my life. I never took Italian, but I am of Portuguese. So Portuguese is kind of similar to Italian. So I figured I could get away with it just because I do actually speak Portuguese. And I wish I had these books in Portuguese, but I only had one, which is Napoleon and Women by Frederick Masson. I did read it. It was good. I can't find any more books in Portuguese, but I wish I had them. Anyway, so we're gonna do Italian. Napoleon was Italian, so this is out of respect for him. He was proud Italian. So let's do it. Ecco del rimanente. E che siamo su questo argomento un aneddoto, i quali, se fossi vero, gioverebbe a mirabilmente ritirare le appassionate tendenze della corte contro il nostro spirito di ghiaccia o inglesi, il quale aveva goduto l'intima confidenza del conte d'Artois durante il suo esilio. Si accompagnava da lui per far ritorno in Inghilterra e dicevagli che nonostante la diversità di nazioni gli avrebbe continuato l'amichevole di lui ricordanza. E che volete voi dire, milord, con queste diversità di nazioni? Rispose vivamente il principe. Per me non esistono ormai che due sole nazioni, la nobiltà e la canaglia. Milord, noi siamo dunque delle nazioni medesima, ma ripigliamo il filo della narrazione. Alcuno si è fatto lecito di scherzare sull'imperio che la principessa Paolina aveva preso all'isola d'Elba sul generale Drouot, a cui faceva le più lieti accoglienze. Al malgrado la differenza di alcuni anni e la severità del suo voto, correva voce che la principessa gli avesse strappato il segreto della partenza 8 giorni prima, rinnovando così gli errori di Torino, nel quale proposito l'imperatore diceva: ecco le donne e il loro potere pericoloso, su di che avendo la signora Bertrand esclamato che il gran maresciallo non avrebbe sicuramente fatto altrettanto. Signora, le rispose vivacemente, sorridendo l'imperatore: egli non era che vostro marito, narrandosi da alcuno che stando la principessa Paolina a Nizza e l'aveva disposto una carrozza postale, la quale giungeva ciascun giorno da Parigi, carica di oggetti d'abbigliamento. L'imperatore soggiunse: se fossi stata mia contessa, la cosa non sarebbe durata a lungo ed io l'avrei severamente ripresa. Ma ecco quello che avviene quando si è imperatore. Non si giunge mai a sapore di queste cose. Dietro si futto conversare. L'imperatore domandò qual fosse la data del mese. Correva l'11 di marzo. Bene, diss'egli, fa un anno questo ora. Un bel giorno mi trovavo a Lione, passavo rassegne e avevo a pranzo il capo del municipio, il quale, fra parentesi, si è possibile vantato che più cattivo pranzo non gli toccò mai in tutta la vita. L'imperatore si inflammò, camminando a passi concitati. Lo era ritornato una grande potenza, continuava egli, e si lasciò sfuggire un sospiro soffocato tosto dalle seguenti parole, dalle quali sarebbe difficile esprimere l'accento talento e la forza lo avevo fondato il più bel impero del mondo. Esso era tale una necessità che ad onta di tutto le tu mi scossi che a sul mio scoglio sembro tuttavia il padrone della Francia. Vedeteci io che ivi accade, scorrete i giornali, voi lo troverete ad ogni linea. Mi si lasci tornare per un istante, sarà manifesto ciò che essa è quello che io posso. Allora, quanti idee, quanti progetti non hai svolto per la gloria e la felicità della patria, e parlò a lungo e con tale interessi e un'espansione che farei dimenticare le ore, i luoghi e i tempi e cieli. Un riassunto, quelle fatalità, diceva egli, che non siasi a giusto calcolato ciò che feci al mio ritorno dall'isola d'Elba, che ciascuno non hai veduto come io fossi il più acconcio e necessario al riposo e all'equilibrio d'Europa, ma i re e i popoli mi hanno temuto, e se è vero torto e posso pagare un tal timore a ben caro prezzo. Lo ritornavo tutt'altra cosa. Essi non poterono crederlo né immaginare che un uomo avesse l'animo a pensarsi forte per cancellare il suo carattere e attemperarsi alla necessità delle circostanze. Lo ne avevo però dato prove e somministrato esagio qualche pegno di tal fatta, e poi nessuno ignori che io non sono l'uomo della mezza misura, non sarei stato francamente il monarca della Costituzione e della pace, come lo era stato della dittatura e dei grandi impedimenti. Well, Napoleon's explaining here that he only came back from Elba because the government was so horrendous, and he really was trying to save France, and that he actually had changed on Elba because he had been working so hard. I don't think he even had time to think. And on Elba, he could just reflect. And when he came back from Elba, he wanted to have a very liberal constitutional monarchy. He really wanted things to be different. And he really wanted peace. And his enemies didn't want peace. And that's what he's explaining here. That he wanted peace. He couldn't have peace because his enemies didn't want peace. And his enemies had all the money. Okay, so it's time to Lavalette tears me up. I can't even handle Lavalette. I mean, like, I can't even read a letter from Lavalette without crying. He is so moving to me. And this is the most moving part of the book. Can't even handle it. So he's in jail, and his poor wife, so sad. She's like losing her mind. This is such a deep story. I hope people like listen to all the memoirs so they can find out about it. This is a crazy story. Lavalette and his wife, he was married to Hortense's cousin. Hortense is like the main character of my whole story. Like, I really do believe that I was her. And her cousin was Emily. And Emily was put together with Lavalette. Napoleon arranged their marriage. And Emily had no interest in marrying Lavalette. Actually, Lavalette was not handsome. And she wanted to be married to the person that Napoleon made Hortense marry, which is his brother, Louis. She was madly in love with Louis Bonaparte, and Napoleon would not let Emily marry Louis because her father had been an emigre. And the emigres were basically the aristocrats who were viewed as betrayers of France. And he was most certainly not going to let his brother marry the daughter of an emigre. He just wasn't. So he ended up arranging that marriage between his stepdaughter and his brother, which, anyone who follows my story or my blog knows that it was a horrendous marriage. It was extremely abusive to Napoleon's stepdaughter, Hortense. And Louis was kind of madly in love with her and abused her out of it. So this is a crazy story. You should really get involved in it if you like drama. Anyway, so let's continue with La Valette. Okay, le temps s'écoule bien lentement en prison. L'ennui commençait à me gagner. Je me rebutais sans raison contre ma situation et je me tourmentais de celle de ma pauvre Emily. Chaque journée m'apportait les plus mauvaises nouvelles de sa santé. Je veux des nouvelles qu'elle ne vint pas, mais rares vont son accouchement. Il y avait de quoi la tuer. Mon ton si mal employé, accuser l'avenir, appuyer toutes les conjectures, à maudire la nouvelle révolution. J'étais dans un bâtiment fenêtre. J'ai senti le besoin de me relever par la seule distraction qui me fut permise par le lecteur. Je me fis supporter toute l'histoire d'Angleterre de Hume. En lisant le récit de toutes les infortunes royales dont elle est pleine, j'ai trouvé mon malheur supportable. J'ai puisé du courage, des consolations, enfin, en me repliant sur ma propre position, je m'arrêtai à cette pensée qu'il était impossible qu'on me condamnât à la peine capitale et que j'en serais quitte depuis quelques années de prison. Cette perspective n'était pas gaie, mais comme j'avais l'espérance d'être enfermée dans une des salles de Paris, je pourrais voir ma famille, la consoler, mettre de l'ordre dans mes affaires. Souvent aussi, je pensais à l'échafaud, mais comme une menace vague et qui ne pouvait se réaliser, j'étais dans le sujet du crime et je me représentais souvent les terreurs d'un voleur, d'un assassin surtout éveillé la nuit par les cris et le spectacle de sa victime. C'est de bâtons enfin sur les mains des bourreaux qui devaient souffrir, mais je pouvais du moins retourner sans remords devant la chaînée du fin ma indignation du souverain. Toutes les colères de ses partisans ne me faisaient pas battre le cœur. Je me sentais fort contre la vengeance. Je leur échappais en suivant dans une barque solitaire l'empereur sur la route de Sainte-Hélène. Il me prit aussi l'envie de savoir ce qu'étaient mes nouveaux compatriotes dans cet étrange pays, car la conciergerie est comme une région lointaine séparée de toute contrée civilisée, une espèce de colonie du Nouveau Monde, régie par des lois brutales et despotiques, et dont la population est composée que des sujets détestables, les revues de la société, et dont la férocité et la déprédation besoin d'être sans cesse surveillées et réprimées, peut y pénétrer. Mais pas ce peu ne s'obtiendront qu'avec peine, a-t-il faut se soumettre à d'humiliantes formalités. Ne voit ses parents, ses amis, ses conseils, qu'à travers des doubles barreaux qui les tiennent éloignés de plusieurs pieds, ont tiré des souliers, espions privilégiés, des paroles et jusque des moindres gestes qui souvent se jouent des sentiments les plus douloureux. En leur imposant un rigoureux silence, il me fut très difficile d'obtenir quelques renseignements des geôliers, ne répondant pas à mes questions, mais d'après mes propres observations, il me parut qu'il y avait, à l'époque de ma détention, environ 50 prisonniers. Ils couchaient dans une vingtaine de chambres qui renfermaient 5 que s'il lit et qui si payant 10 francs que par mois, ce qui s'appelait être à la pistole, ce qui n'avions pas de quoi payer, passions la nuit dans une espèce de encaissue de la paille rarement renouvelée. La plupart de tous ces malheureux allions être condamnés aux galères, les plus grands nombres plus volent au crime de faux. Leur insouciance sur le sort était inconcevable. Je n'avais pas voulu priver ma femme de mon valet de chambre. Je vais donc accepter pour mon service particulier un prisonnier condamné, mais qui ne devait subir sa peine que quelques mois plus tard. Employé comptable dans une administration, il avait soustrait des fonds de sa caisse. Il devait passer pour se faire 6 années au galère. C'était mon espion. Son patinage mieux et son odeur affectée à mes servieurs me donnaient un grand dégoût pour sa personne, mais soit par compassion pour son sort, qui l'épouvantait, soit pas de certitude toute la voix remplacée par un autre plus galera que lui. Je m'étais décidé à le garder. Cependant, de perfidie, les filles éloignées de moi, y couchaient avec 6 autres prisonniers dans une chambre située dans la partie occidentale du bâtiment. Ces malheureux se mirent en tête de prendre la fuite en faisant un mur de plus de 12 pieds de passeurs et de s'échapper par le creux des lunettes. Mon honnête serviteur le procura une énorme barre de fer qui les prisonniers appelons, je crois, une chancelière. Mais ils avaient commencé par les travailleurs et le concierge les laissa faire pendant longtemps. Pendant la nuit, ils retiraient tous les gravats, en remplissant leurs poches tous les matins, les dispersaient étroitement dans la queue pour arriver à la muraille extérieure. Ils étaient obligés de déplacer et de replacer tous les nuits une énorme pierre de taille de 6 pieds de longueur. Ce travail durait depuis plusieurs mois. Et ils n'avaient plus qu'une nuit d'effort employée pour retrouver leur liberté quand le concierge vint faire sa visite. Toutefois, ils m'ont découvert. Les traîtres furent en apparence enveloppés, comme les autres, dans le châtiment qui leur fut infligé. Mais ses compagnons ne priront pas l'échange. Et le concierge me dit que cet homme courait le risque d'être assassiné au bagne, qu'il serait difficile même qu'il fît le voyage de la chaîne avec eux. Les galériens, dont impitoyables peut se joindre des trahisons, 10 années ne suffisant pas pour le faire oublier. Anyway, so the is talking about how his wife is basically losing her sanity, and he can see it in the letters that he's getting from her, and he's so upset about it. And he figures you're not going to execute him for operating the post office. It's just going to be a couple years of jail, right? And he's seeing all these people getting carted up to be executed who are murderers. Figures they're not going to be that unfair to him. And then they assign him his own personal spy, of course, because that's how it is under these people. Everybody gets spies if they're at all a threat to the system, and they have so much money, so everybody gets their own spies if they're a threat. And I've been talking about that for years, and they don't have the right to send me all these spies and all these people trying to mess me up. That's illegal, that's evil. And I'm going to freaking talk about it because I've had it. I really had it with these games. And I think everybody should really stand up for themselves like I am. I think the world would be a much better place. People had courage and stood up for themselves. Anyway, so it turned off. It's interesting how it turns off. Anyway, we'll see how much it turns off while I read this. If it keeps turning off, I'm just going to have to keep redoing it. So, anyway, so Napoleon is telling Antomarchi about his conquest of Italy. So that's what's going on here in Spanish. Segunda campaña, el primer resultado de aquellos hechos favorables fue el de obligar a Wormser a que pasase el Rin, corriendo con 40,000 hombres al socorro del Tirón. Aquel general se presenta sobre el Adige con 80,000 combatientes, ocupa el Montevaldo, penetra por el valle de Sabia y llega a un tiempo mismo a Verona y a Brescia. Nosotros no podíamos oponer más que 30,000 hombres a aquel nuevo y temible enemigo, pues teníamos que conservar el conquistado y que sostener el sitio de Mantua, que estaba a punto de rendirse con una guarnición de más de 8,000 hombres. Bonaparte, en esta segunda campaña, se mostró superior a Federico, que se había hallado en una posición semejante. No se obstina en el sitio de Mantua, como lo hizo el rey de Prusia en el sitio de Praga, mas sus resoluciones se siguen con no menor rapidez que las de este, desconcertado el enemigo con aquella prontitud de movimientos. No hallaba jamás el ejército francés al amanecer el día en el punto que le había dejado la noche anterior. Supliendo el número con las marchas se mostraba Bonaparte continuamente en todas partes y casi siempre superior en fuerzas. Las batallas de Leonardo y de Castiglione coronaron sus proyectos atrevidos. Worms, vencido a pesar de su numerosa caballería, tuvo que volverse a las gargantas de Tirol, dejando una grande parte de su ejército en poder de los franceses. En todos aquellos movimientos que ofrecerán útiles meditaciones a los que siguen la carrera de las armas, Bonaparte hizo ver que por lo común el mejor medio de defenderse es el de atacar, y el gran ingenio de la guerra está especialmente en el arte de volver a tomar la iniciativa cuando se ha perdido en los primeros encuentros favorables el enemigo. Entonces se extendió su reputación por toda Europa. Los generales franceses le proclamaron por su maestro, y los antiguos compañeros de Federico anunciaron desde aquel momento al héroe que debía empuñar el cetro de la guerra, vacante desde su muerte. So Napoleon's saying that he won his battles with far fewer troops than his enemy, which I think is something he's very proud of. And he's this fanboy of Frederick the Great. He loves Frederick the Great. He's like this Prussian king. So he's comparing, he's saying finally he's like as good as Frederick the Great, even better. So he loves him. And St. Helena is always so proud that he has his watch. loves Project 08. Anyway, he liked the Germans. He was a fan of the Germans. He's actually a fan of everybody. He was a very benevolent person. All right, time for Les Kaiser in German in the nearly unreadable Fractor. It's so hard to read this. It's not just a different font with bizarre characters, but it's super tiny. And I truly, if there are any Germans out there, I'm doing my best. Please read along. I want you to understand this because this is being kept, particularly from Germans. I want people to understand this. Oh my goodness, they're always after the Germans. That's why I stand up for them. The Germans are tough. They go after them first, and I respect them for that. Anyway, here we go. Diese Worte Völker alle kräftig herausziehen, wiederholten, richteten die Gemüter wieder auf und fragten nach und nach einer ganz entgegengesetzten Stimmung hervor, ebenso als wie vorher die Armee bei ihrer Mutlosigkeit von Rückzugsfrage rief jetzt alles mit Enthusiasmus erfüllte, so den Waffen, so viel man, so freche Vergaben. Möbeln, Cremona, Lodi, Pavia, Bologna erfuhr, dass die Armee einen Verlust erlitten habe, kamen die noch angehalten, Verwundeten und Kranken aus den Hospitalen herbei, und mit noch Winternden wurden sie in Reihe und Glied zu stellen. Es war ein rührendes Schauspiel. Die ganze Armee war davon auf, das innigste bewegte. 6 Marsch der Armee nach Ronco, wo sie auf einer aus reinen erwähnten Brücke über die Edgegate einlegte, greifte am 14. November mit Einbruch der Nacht das Lager von Verona zu dem Waffen. In der größten Stil setzen sich die Kolonnen in Marsch, gehen durch die Stadt und stellen sich auf dem rechten Ufer auf. Die Stunde des Ausbruchs der Richtung, welche man nimmt und die wie ein Rückzug aussieht, das Schweigen, das man beobachtete, Gegend sonst gewöhnlich mit teils Tagsbefehls bekannt gemachte Wörter, dass man sich schlagen wolle. Die Eingetretenen Verhaltensweisen einen Vorteil. Alles bestätigte der Meinung, dass man sich zurückgesehen. Der erste Schritt schon so einer solchen Maßregel, der unvermeidlich die Aufhebung der Belagerung von Mantua zur Folge haben muss, kundete den Verlust von ganz Italien in Voraussang und der jenige Teil seiner Bewohner, der in uns Sieger der Hoffnung einer schönen Zukunft setzt, folgt ängstlich und mit geprisstem Herzen den Bewegungen eines Heeres, mit welchem jener bessere Aussicht verschwindet. Auf einmal wagte die Armee, anstatt die Straße von Peschiera zu verfolgen, linksum, geht an der Edge fort und konnte dann noch vor Tagesbrücke nach Ronco. Andreossi hatte eben dort eine Brücke schlagen lassen und mit den ersten Strahlen der sondern erblickt sie das Heertürke ein vages, links abmarschieren mit großem Erstaunen auf dem entgegengesetzten Ufer. Jetzt begannen die Offiziere und die Soldaten, welche zu der Zeit, als sie Firmse verfolgt hatten, durch diese Gegenden gekommen waren, die Absicht des Generals zu begreifen. Sie sehen wohl, dass Caldiero, welches nie nehmen konnte, umgehen will, dass da mit 11.000 Mann gegen 45.000 in der Ebene nichts aufrichten kann. Er letzte auf Jose Chaussin in weite Sumpfe lockte, wo die Menge Anus werde unermutenden Spießen der Kolonnen alles glitt. Jetzt belebt aufs neue Siegeshoffnung aller Herzen. Jeder will sich selbst übertreffen, einen so schönen, so mutlosen Plan zu unterstützen. Kilman war mit 1.500 Mann von allen Waffengattungen zu Verona geblieben, hatte seine Tore fest gesperrt und alle Verbindungen strenger untersagt. Der Feind war kein sicherer Unwissenheit über unsere Bewegung. Die Brücke von Ronco war nach dem rechten Ufer des Alpen zugeschlagen. Ungefähr eine Viertelstunde für dessen Mundung. Wäre sie nach dem linken Ufer bin geschlagen worden, so hätte sich auf ebenen Lande befunden, anstatt dass man in Morasten sein wollte, wo die Vielzahl der Truppen ohne Russen ist. Von der anderen Seite war sie fürchten, auch wenn sie mochten, nach erhaltener Kunde von dem Geschehenen plötzlich auf Verona losgehen und es wegnehmen, von der sie nach Peschiera zurückzuziehen und das von Ronco in Gefahr zu bringen. Man musste also auf das rechte Ufer des Alpen gehen, den Feind, wenn Verona greifen sollte, in den Rücken zu fallen und auf diese Weise diesen Platz vom linken Ufer auszudecken, was man nicht sehen konnte, hätte, wenn die Brücke nach dem linken Ufer geschlagen worden wäre, weil dann der Feind das rechte Ufer besessen und dadurch geschützt Verona nehmen konnte. Dieser der Grund war bei dem Schlagen der Brücke in Betracht gekommen. Dann gingen 3 Schafe, die insgesamt von Morasten und Geben waren von Ronco, wo man die Brücke geschlagen hatte, aus. Die erste stromauswärts an der Atsch nach Verona, die zweite bei Arkol vorbei, wo sie 1,5 Stunden von der Atsch entfernt. Ein Brücke über das Flütchen Alpen befindet nach Villanova und die dritte Stromabwärts an der Atsch nach Avaredo. This is Napoleon talking about, again, his conquest of Italy and bridges being blown up. So good night. I hope you all have a very good night. Thank you so much for listening.